And good morning. We are off and running. A nice statement to say about the NFL Combine and the times that are be putting down right now. Let me bring in our couple of face groups here. Scott Kennedy Facebook group, and then the All Falcons Facebook group. All Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons, and it looks like we're good to go. So welcome in everybody. And like I said, we are off and running. And Nick, I think that's a good way to start talking about this NFL Combine, running, the speed, the quickness, the burst, the 40s. I know some of those times were unofficial, but whether they were 4.21 unofficially or not, you're breaking 4.3, you're flying. And there were some fast times yesterday for the wide receivers and the quarterbacks for that matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some good times yesterday. The agility times are starting to come out now as well, which are a little lower. Although a lot of these guys are not doing the agilities these days because it's happening so late in the night after they've run the 40. So they're like, you know what? I ran a good 40. We'll see ya agilities at the pro day. So maybe not the worst idea, but who knows? I saw it was Dane Brugler just had a tweet out there that since these are the number of wide receivers with sub 3 cone 40s since 2017 and 23. 2018 had 18, 2019 had 8, 2020 had 4, and so far this year we've had 2. So things are dropping a lot. I think there's a change there. Less guys are doing it as well. They're only as good as a denominator, but it's interesting.
I could see them doing, and that one's hard to a 3 cone. Unless the surface is slippery, it's pretty universal. Not like a 40 on a track can be very different. I was at a pro day one time. They were running the 40s on the track, on a rubberized track, and track spikes. That's very different than the old Indianapolis slow turf they used to have. Now, I mentioned a little bit yesterday in the chat a little bit. It's like when you start seeing some of these times, as everybody starts, The Incredibles. I don't know if you've watched as many kid movies as I have, but The Incredibles. When everybody's special, no one is. Now a 4.28 is still pretty special, but as everybody's ripping off 4.4s, had the most sub 4.4s that they ever had at 8. When everybody's under 4.5s, it starts kind of saying, I'm starting to kind of push it out. It's like my board's starting to just reset itself again to, okay, everybody's fast. It's back to where I thought they were to a certain extent.
Yeah. Common phrase for scouting communities: you don't grade him twice for something. If somebody's already fast and then he runs a 4.3, guess what? You shouldn't bump him because you already evaluated him as fast.
Yeah, I knew he was fast. Now, for a guy like George Pickens, okay, that was someone I wanted to see. And, he ran a 4.47 at 6'3", 195 coming off a knee injury. I think he only played in the last game or two last year. Yeah. Good. Okay, I like that. I haven't seen Christian Watson as much, obviously. I saw him in person. Yeah. Really, really liked what I saw as far as his frame, his blocking, his hands, all the things I like in a wide receiver. Well, then the kid goes out there and jumps out of the freaking building like a frog with an 11-4 standing broad jump, 11-4 standing broad, which led everybody yesterday, and then rips off a 4.3, in the 4.3s. I'm like, this was kind of my guy. I'm like, yeah, this is the guy I'm going to be able to talk about like I did Spencer Brown. Well, hell, is he going to last? Is he going to sneak his way into the first round?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to one of my Twitter followers. I don't know what his real name is, but it's Vij, V-I-J, and he's been hyping me up Christian Watson since like November this year. And I'm like, do the Broncos really need another Tim Patrick-esque wide receiver, especially after, I think it was like pretty soon after they paid him that he was bringing him up. But man, he's been really good. I enjoy his play a lot. He's kind of weird because I don't think he's the most physically dominant at the catch point or beating press. He's a good blocker, but for his size, he's a little bit more finesse in the air, which is awesome because he can create some separation and be some acrobat with attacking the ball. But again, very good player. The one that stands out to me here is that everybody had been going on and on about Chris Olave being the fastest wide receiver at Ohio State, and not so fast, my friends, although Chris Olave originally ran like a 4.29 and then they bumped it up almost a full point or a tenth of a second, which is crazy. But Garrett Wilson running a blazing speed at the 40M. He's been my favorite receiver for Ohio State. And goodness, he's probably now my wide receiver 1 after Jamison Williams' injury and Trellon Burks having a rather unfortunate combine so far.
Well, and, talking here about, just remember Cooper Kupp ran a 4.61. Now I've said a zillion times, if you take this, and I always have to preface with this because it's so true. If you take this statement out of context, I will sound like a moron.
Yep.
But speed is overrated. The 40 is overrated. It absolutely is. You want to know if you've got the enough factor. And then there's the plus. Okay.
Yeah.
Then there's the plus. But I told this story yesterday on Mile Huddle on Broncos for Breakfast that I once had a kid. He ran like a 4.48 for me when I was timing him. And he turned around, he comes back, he goes, he was really excited with a 4.48. And I was excited for him. He says, "What do you think I can get that down to?" And I told him, "I don't care. I don't care. You're fast.
Work
I'm
on
not
football."
looking for a track team. I am not scouting here to try and put together a 4x100 relay team. I'm looking for physical attributes that will match the football playmaking ability. Jarvis Landry, I'm not kidding on this. Jarvis Landry ran like a 4.8 for me when I had him down in I think we were down in New Orleans. I don't think we did that one in Mobile with the Under Armour combine, but he ran like a 4.8 for me, and I knocked him down a little bit. But by the end of the season, he was still 5 stars because, he did everything else so well. Odell Beckham Jr., I would bet he's if you were to run the 40s right now, he'd be in the 4.6s. I would bet because it was never about speed with those guys.
No.
Now, when you combine all that stuff with the size and the speed, you get Calvin Johnson, you get AJ Green, you get Julio Jones, but you don't have to have all of those in order to be a wonderful, wonderful wide receiver for sure.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big one. And I see we got a super chat coming in from a good friend of the show. Joey's doing his work, obviously rocking the microphone picture there, doing work for the Broncos in the draft as well. Keep up the good work, guys. Draft season is the best. Absolutely is the best. I am eating worms, as the phrase goes right now, with everybody there in Indy, seeing all the pictures of people hanging out after the show as well. I had some good times doing that, some rough mornings, but some good times. Man, Scott, I know that you always say that, you're more of the hermit and you don't participate in those after the combine event stuff.
Antisocial, afraid of interaction and all that. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, it's the combine, everybody, the event itself, the prospect interviews, et cetera, a lot of fun. But what the combine's really about is the after events, all the deals that are getting done in the booths and the rumors that are coming out. And man, the rumors are aplenty right now coming out of Denver. We'll see what's real. Like we said yesterday on the show, some of it's coming from agents trying to hype their guys. Some of it's coming from, the Lions really love Malik Willis. They might take him at 2, unless you trade up to number 2. That kind of thing going on. So who knows, but always a lot of fun and hard to parse the reality from the lies. But either way, I'm a rumor information junkie, so give it to me. I'll just store it away, and whatever comes to be comes.
Well, let's say hello. We're a few minutes in here. Let's say hello to some folks in the chat too, real quick. US Dave coming in. Because we're not normally on Fridays. We may start doing Fridays on this channel again. We'll see how that goes. Welcome in, US Dave. And Luke Wright was on his way to Vegas, and he's in with his brother. Well, shout out to him. Well, is his name him, Luke? Come on, man. Help me out here. I want to give him a shout out. I don't know your brother's name. Help me out. Mr. Wright, how you doing? Shout out for Mr. Wright. Jeremy, we already showed Jeremy here. Mike Larry coming in. I remember that ghost face. That was the Scream didn't scare me too, but I was terrified of slasher movies. Just terrified of them. Saw Freddy Krueger when I was in 6th grade and had nightmares for 3 years. It was ridiculous all the way through middle school. You still don't get near me with a Freddy Krueger thing because now I'm bigger and will probably shoot you. So, but the Scream one was a little more fun. That one didn't scare me as much. Well, welcome in, Mike. Appreciate you being here. And he says, Vilas Jones time surprised me along with Olave. Vilas had a sneaky go route at Senior Bowl practice. And I actually highlighted him, Mike, and we'll bring up that video again real quick because I put his stuff up on Senior Bowl. He's one of the first guys. If I went through my Twitter feed, I was like, Vilas Jones is quietly having one of the best weeks out here. I mean, you see the speed there. He got behind in a hurry, and I was late on the draw, so I forgot who actually threw the ball because I'm an idiot. I probably went back and saw it if I have the original. You see him running a nice little corner out here and getting a little separation. But Vilas Jones had a very, very good Senior Bowl. And then he goes off and whips off a 4.31. Really? At 6 foot, 204 pounds, almost 10-inch hands. He's a little bit older, but that's okay.
Yeah, he's
So, and
really
then
good.
I hear, unfortunately, the autoplay on the video. I was like, "Is that Nick talking?" No, that was Rich Eisen talking to me when I went to look at something else. So, yes, Velus Jones. One of the questions I got yesterday was, who is a sleeper second round guy with speed that can take the top off like that? Well, how about Velus Jones?
Yeah, no, he's definitely fun. Really talented player at Tennessee. Obviously, Tennessee has had a erratic quarterback under center for the better part of a few seasons here. Hendon Hooker had a pretty good year last year, still erratic, but good tools. And I think it was Fran Duffy, who covers the draft for the Eagles, one of the better draft analysts out there, in my opinion, was talking about Velus Jones is going to come out of the combine from what he's heard and establish himself as a guaranteed top 100 pick in a class that has a lot of good wide receivers. So I'm really excited. I mean, quarterbacks, everybody's been talking about quarterbacks. Wide receivers is one where I love the position, very valuable. I'm kind of actually, I don't know if you and I talked about this the other day. I used to be a very big proponent of 12 and 21 personnel to dictate opposing personnel. But I think Vic Fangio has changed the game a little bit in that regard because guess what? Guess what I'm going to do as a defensive team if you're going to 12 and 21
It's a base
personnel?
nickel.
I'm going to stay in nickel. I don't
Yeah, it's a
care.
base nickel.
Yeah,
Mhm.
where unless you have the best blocking tight end in football, the best fullback in football, and the best yak player in football all on the same team. Hello, Kyle Shanahan, 49ers. You're not really doing a good job dictating other teams to get into base packages, and that's rampant across the
Yeah,
NFL now. So wide
you
receivers,
just named the
galore.
49ers and Cowboys dynasties of the 80s and 90s just a little bit before your time when I talk
Yeah,
about, what happened to these guys. That's what I grew up with. I think it
yeah,
was Brent Jones maybe was the tight end for the 49ers, but they had Jerry Rice and they had Roger Craig and Tom Rathman. They had Wendell Tyler was
yeah,
running back in there. So, and Joe Montana, and then good defense, obviously the
yeah,
good defense to go with it. So I still long for the days of the fullback.
yeah,
I like the guys to watch them go through. I love the blue collar guys
yeah,
that they get that work. So let me ask you a question. I want to kind of turn this into a
for
separate
sure.
segment. Give me your five guys that you think that really helped themselves yesterday.
Five guys who helped themselves yesterday. Putting me on the spot here. One of them
I am.
is
I am. We didn't do any prep work with this, but I knew you'd be prepared, so I wasn't worried about stumping you.
Yeah, no, some guys who really stood out for me yesterday. One of them is the Memphis wide receiver, Calvin Austin.
Alvin Austin.
Calvin Austin. Yeah, he's diminutive, but everybody knew that he was a track god, stud, and he proved it time and time and time again. I mean, he ended up with a 8.9 ROS despite being that diminutive. That means that dude is flying. And I remember Broncos country specifically will remember likes of Isaiah McKenzie, who Denver could not really figure out how to use in their offense. Then he went to a team that is utilizing the second most 10 personnel in football, really a spread heavy team, not to the extent of Kyler Murray's Arizona Cardinals, but what Brian Dabble did with Josh Allen, wide receivers on wide receivers, and made it a space game. Man, if you can get Calvin Austin in a scheme where he can get space, he's one of the few guys who actually I think can be a yak weapon in the NFL. Now you're gonna have to manufacture touches for him, but he interests me a heck of a lot just because he is so dynamic as an athlete.
All right. So for those of you at home, uh, Calvin Austin was 5'8", 170 pounds, with a 39-inch vertical leap and a 4.32 shuttle, and maybe most impressively was 132 inches. So that was an 11'3" at that height, an 11'3" broad jump. You know who my comp for him is? Anybody this is an age check. Spud Webb. If you don't
Mm,
know who Spud Webb is, do a Google search on this. He was 5'6" and won the dunk contest in the NBA. That's my
yeah.
comp on this guy, is Spud Webb.
Yep.
Good shout on that one. Again, you can be small-ish. You don't want to have a whole team, but if you've got one guy like that, he can
Yep.
absolutely be a weapon on that. So that's one. Calvin Austin, good shout.
The next one's got to be, we already kind of hinted about him, but Christian Watson, what he did at his size. Now, he does kind of scare me a bit because maybe he's a little bit too tall and lean. There haven't been, I think, again, we're talking somebody in the draft community out there did a compilation of wide receivers who are 6'4" and taller and sub 220 pounds, and how many of them have succeeded in the last 20 years. And the list is one, AJ Green. Nobody else with that
And
size
he was,
profile
yeah,
has
he
worked
was
out.
fairly big. I remember that draft because the question on AJ Green, because AJ Green and Julio Jones were both from the South, and they were both superstars since
Mhm.
they were sophomores in high school.
Yep.
So they've been compared to each other for 15 years now.
Yeah.
And I remember coming into the combine, the question is, okay, we like AJ, he might be a little bit more fluid, a little bit faster, but we like Julio because he's a little bit bigger, he's a little bit stronger. Well,
Hmm.
Julio comes in and rips off a 4.35,
Yep.
and then AJ comes in and weighs like 215.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I'm throwing my hands up at this one. I don't know what to do anymore. And that's kind of how it's been their entire careers.
Hmm.
You know, if you were to say, hey, I'm an AJ Green guy, and Jeremy Shawn says, well, I'm a Julio Jones guy, I'm not going to argue with either one of you. You know, I don't argue levels of elite. Those are good arguments for both of them. But 6'4", 208 and lean, I'm not that worried about putting a little bit of poundage on a little bit extra muscle weight on Christian Watson.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just one of those things where, again, he's a little bit of an outlier. Maybe that knocks him down out of the first round given his testing, but day two, for sure. I think it's somebody out there has been mocking him to Minnesota at like 14, which is, I think that's a little ridiculous, but very good player. Another guy who stood out to me today was, or yesterday, I guess, was Desmond Ritter. We knew that Desmond Ritter was a solid athlete, but he's coming in as one of the 15 best quarterback athletic profiles in the last 35 years, according to Ross. So that's really intriguing. He still scares me to heck because he is a twig. That base, it looks like he's running out. He's a stick figure. And given how long he's been in playing football, you would hope that he would have a little bit more thickness in his base. How much we're talking about guys leg thickness and booties, it's ridiculous, but I mean it matters. You need some thickness at the quarterback position especially, but out there running a 4.49 40, the explosives were also really good. I know that he was kind of quiet at the Senior Bowl, didn't really stand out, but people that talk about Desmond Ritter rave about the intelligence. You thought he stood out. See, a lot of people that I've spoken to thought he was kind of ho-hum, maybe didn't have the flashes, but I think if there's anybody in this class that has a chance to be the Dak Prescott in this class, a little bit unheralded, but he's been really good at it for a long time, kind of built up a program that hasn't been built up prior, does a lot pre-snap wise on his plate. Ritter might be the guy. So I just wish he was a little bit thicker, but he's
Yeah,
interesting.
6'3", 211, not too bad. Not too
Yeah.
bad, but I get what you're coming from. But watching him, I liked him again. He's got a clean release and he's
Yeah.
fluid on the field. I'm like, he looks the part when he's out there. And that, to me, he passed the eye test right away. Now I've got to dig in a little bit deeper on that. But yes, second, third round, absolutely. Someone said, I mentioned that I took when he ran his time, I reposted an article from All Falcons saying, hey, he could be the replacement for Matt Ryan.
Mhm.
And everybody, for some reason, when anybody sees a headline, they forget that there is a pick after number 8. That there are more than just one pick. I was like, I didn't mean number 8, guys. I was talking about, if you read farther down the line, and I'm like, well, now he might have been able to edge his way up into the 25 to 40 range. And someone's like, well, he's it doesn't matter if he's fast, they're going to get killed. I'm like, that's not the point. The point is I like his arm. I like his production. I liked his mobility. Now I still like his arm. I still like his production. And now I love his mobility, out there running 4.5s at 6'3", 211 pounds.
Yeah, absolutely. He's very interesting. Again, it's the slight frame for somebody who probably will be a running threat. I love though that he has, I'll bring it back to Nathaniel Hackett. In his interview when talking about quarterbacks, he said athleticism is a nice plus to have, but it's not what you build your quarterback on.
Mhm.
Obviously, if that's their call, if that's their best play, then or if that's their best attribute, you're going to figure out a way to use it.
Yeah, the
But
busted play is not a basis for an offense.
No, but it's something that you can't coach also. So if they have that inherent ability, it's nice to have, especially in today's NFL with how important explosive plays are. But with Ritter, the nice thing about him is that he has that athleticism. He's had that athleticism. He wants to play from within the pocket. He wants to play within structure, and then he can use that as a bonus if he wants. So, color me intrigued. I know that game against Alabama wasn't great. You can parse that to heck, but he has some solid tape. Just nothing really incredible. Another guy that stands out to me, just real quick, Jelani Woods had an incredible.
I was about to click on tight ends to figure out which was a 6'7" guy that ran a 4.61.
Jelani Woods.
That's him.
Really interesting profile. He transferred to Virginia back in, I think it was 2021. where he wasn't really utilized, but he coming from Oklahoma State, which you think Oklahoma State would be using the tight end some, especially if you had one that was that size with so much space in the field, running those air raid spread concepts. But alas, did not. But he's a heck of an athlete. I didn't think his drills were as good. And a quick shout out to, I don't think I'd take a tight end in this class before pick 75 in general. I just don't think there's the dynamic level of players. I also think the tight end position is getting further and further devalued, especially if you look at stats like EPA per play compared to what.
It was coming back, though. It was coming back.
Yeah.
It was, Aaron Hernandez and Gronkowski and the Patriots were making the tight end cool again.
They just don't get the volume of targets, and they don't typically dictate coverage like a wide receiver can. They don't have the gravity. I digress, though. I thought Trey McBride looked pretty good and smooth in the drills. Some people I've heard, Trey McBride in the first round. Are you kidding me? No. But beginning of the third round, I'm starting to be interested in some of these tight ends. I also really liked, he didn't run, I don't think. The size of Jeremy Ruckert was impressive. I'm excited to see where he goes.
Speaking of small hands, Jelani Woods, they're 9 1/4 at 6'7".
Yeah.
That's small-ish for sure. And I bet he could dunk a basketball, but I bet he's got to go up with two hands to do it.
Yeah.
I know he could dunk a basketball. He didn't do the vertical, but he's 6'7", 34 and an eighth inch. He's got a good wingspan. I know he can get up there and dunk, but I couldn't dunk a basketball because I couldn't get up and I've got like 9.5, 9 3/4 hands. So that's actually fairly small for the first time in my life paying attention to hand size on something like that. For someone not named Michael Jordan, that's the first time I ever really paid attention to hand size. Michael Jordan was the first player I ever saw that would do a one-handed pump fake because his hands were so freakishly big.
Yeah.
He could go like this and then just stick it. He'd hold the ball on a pump fake. Like no one else did that. No one else could do that. Okay, so give me one more to round this out. Somebody who helped themselves yesterday.
I guess it's got to be Malik Willis. He's been kind of the talk of the combine for the quarterbacks, standing out. Kenny Pickett had a really good athletic profile too. I wanted to shout out that he tested as a solid athlete, despite the hand measurements, which is a concern, but a solid athlete. Malik Willis, watching him throw, the arm is just different, man. The arm, it's just different. The ball explodes out of his hand. The downfield accuracy. And I don't think he is Josh Allen because Josh Allen is a sample size of one. But his situation at Liberty, personally, I think is similar to Josh Allen's senior year, where he's going out there and deciding to make improbable plays or going away from the check down that is there because it's a lot on him to make those plays for his team to succeed because even at Liberty, he was at a talent disadvantage compared to most of his opponents. And B, he could. Like he can. So he did. So again, I think it was Tim Jenkins, talking with him, talking a little bit of quarterback. He's a former NFL quarterback there, had a, cup of Joe in the league for a bit, saying, is it good process when, you're missing the check down that's right there and you're pulling it and running it for 60 yards for a touchdown? Or is it a bad process and you're just getting lucky? It's like, well, the fact that I'm looking at it as the fact that he can do that matters a heck of a lot. I think I can coach him to take that check down, but I can't coach him.
You want him to be able, can he make that progression into, and that's what they say, can you become an NFL quarterback? Some of these guys are able to, we use a similar analogy when we talk about the big running backs who were fast enough to outrun guys at lower levels that didn't ever learn how to run big.
Royce Freeman.
Derrick Henry was a guy like that. I had said about Derrick Henry in high school had amazing numbers. Don't get me wrong, but he was 6'3", 220, and was playing at ULEaf in Florida, playing at a smaller level of competition. He was a 100-meter state champion. He could fly. He rushed for like 3,000 yards in a season, but he was soft. Yeah. He was Charmin soft.
Yeah.
And when he went to Alabama, I was like, yes, that's awesome, because Nick Saban will either make this guy a man or he will wash out and it will be done quickly. And he made him a man, and we're all better for it because I love watching Derrick Henry play ball. But that's kind of an analogy we use when we talk about the quarterbacks. Yeah, at that level, you can get away with that.
Yep.
But you better be able to go through your reads because you're not going to be able to outrun most of these guys. If they're expecting you to run, you're not going to be able to outrun any of them. But if you can open it up with the pass and do that type of thing, then we see slow guys run 15 yards for first downs.
Yeah. Yeah. And if, again, just Malik Willis has had a heck of a time. He's, I don't know if you saw the video of him helping out a homeless person on his walking his way to the
I
combine.
did, and the skeptic in me is just kind of like, eh.
That's staged. Yeah,
Yeah,
that.
I can't help it. And someone put that underneath the comments. I was like, all right, who's going to be the first one to say it? That it's not necessarily staged, but it's there's cameras everywhere. You know what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that about Malik. It might not have anything to do with it, but someone underneath they said something like that. It's like, oh yeah, nice job by the film crew, or his agent or something like that. And someone said, it's sad that you think that way. I'm like, it is. You're right.
Yeah.
It is sad that I think that way because I'm right most of the time, and that's sad. But yeah,
Yep.
I credit this area for Malik Willis and his upbringing. He went to high school about 15 minutes from my house, Roswell, Georgia. It's a good area. It's a good area. It's down to earth.
It's got to be very frustrating as an Auburn fan, though. The fact that you kept Bo Nix and jettisoned Malik Willis, man, he'd have been very fun there.
Like I said, I poured my fandom into international football.
Yeah.
So I haven't I've watched a half a dozen Auburn games in 5 years.
Yeah.
I just my Saturdays are taken up with my kids, and my fandom is I pour my fandom into here. So I watch them. Again, I didn't grow up in Alabama. I grew up in Georgia. I was an Atlanta sports fan. Someone hurt themselves. You mentioned this one earlier and may have come down a little bit. How about Trellon Burks, wide receiver, Arkansas?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been horrific, but I was led to believe that he'd be running, potentially a sub 4.5 40 and having great jumps, and so far that's not been the case. The hand size also was a little bit surprising given that he has 5XL gloves. I guess he must have sausage fingers, not the longest in the world, but just some absolute meat hooks. But he's not been the dynamic height, weight, speed freak that many believe. I was hoping for more of a Demaryius Thomas level of combine show out. And so far, he's looking a little bit more like Laviska Shenault out there, who had a unfortunate combine. I think he was dealing with a hamstring, but 2 years into the NFL, Laviska's been struggling a bit. So
yeah, I mean, his numbers are.
It's not like Calvin Benjamin, but it's not.
His
top
numbers
10.
are okay. 6'2", 225, 4.55. Those are good.
Yeah, enough.
33-inch vertical leap isn't so good.
Mm-mm.
That's not good. A 10.2 broad jump at this level it's going to be mid-pack around the linebackers. That's going to be meh also. So he'll be about 50% in most of these, which again, that's good enough.
Yep.
But when you're touting this guy as, oh, this is going to be, he could end up being a top 5 pick because he's a freakazoid. Well, no, he's not. He can still be a great player. Don't get me wrong. But he's not he's not an athletic freak. At least he wasn't yesterday.
Yeah, really. And guys, why do these drills matter? What does each one do? Maybe we should have had a pre-combine presser. But the jumps specifically show that lower body explosiveness. And that's a pretty hard one to cheat. So to an extent, you can't really train that one as much as the 40 and the agilities. And I thought Burks would be more explosive. Now we know he's not the best at sinking his hips and his routes. I'm not shocked that his agilities were not incredible. But and those are just coming out right now. But still, it's
he's got the numbers of a big running back.
Yep. Which that's fine. And that probably will get him drafted in the top 40, maybe even in the top 30, but not top 10. That's probably in my opinion, that's probably out the window.
One of the comments came in. EJ, good morning, coming in here talking about Desmond Ridder. I think his official was 4.51. Whatever. 4.49. That's fast for a QB. And I'm glad, Jeremy and I think we share a brain half the time on this. He says that's fast for anyone on earth. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it is to be a little relative based on the flying times that people had where, again, I used to tell kids, don't worry about the time. I might have measured this thing at 43 yards just to mess with your heads. Yeah. I want to look at I want to stack them up in order. I'll put up I'll cover the times up. I don't care. I know Chris Olave is fast. Where did you finish relative to him? Did you run, close to where he ran? If he ran a 4.5, I know he can fly. If he ran a 4.3, I know he can fly. Where were you in regards to that? And that's kind of how I started looking at some of these times coming through. Because, George Pickens was like 4.4, mid 4.4s to begin with. And, I see a comment, oh, that's fast for someone his size. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. He's running 4.4s. That's fast enough to play any position in the NFL, period. The average time for the corners of this combine will probably be 4.43, 4.44, because that's fast. Usually it's in the 4.5s. Usually the average time's 4.52. The average time for wide receivers yesterday was 4.48, and that's the fastest time on record. It said 20 years, and I put in commentary, that's probably because they didn't have the data from before 2003, because I don't think they got faster running on that slow carpet at Indy, 20 years ago. But yeah, that is fast. I'm going to say good morning to a couple more. Jason Kendall coming in and says, love that last name.
Spelled a little differently. I think somebody, when my ancestors came to Ellis Island, they're like, did you say A or E? Just put an E. I don't care. But Kendall. We also got Eugene.
Good morning, Eugene. Glad you're here. Clee, appreciate you. Glad you're here also. Rob, welcome in.
Colin Woods in the house too. Hi, Colin. Good to see you. Colin was saying, I thought of a funny one here saying wide receivers or tight ends, linebackers don't matter in the first round, and non-top 10 QBs are of little to no value. They're valuable, but it's just where am I willing to spend the coin on them? And I think this is also something I've been thinking about yesterday. It kind of just, maybe I heard it from somewhere else too, but it just really stuck in my head. Wide receiver and offensive tackle are so valuable in today's NFL, but for the opposite reason. Wide receiver, so valuable because what they do on the field and what they can do to impact the game is probably the third most valuable position in the game. But we're just talking about it right now. The hordes of wide receiver coming in every single draft class is insane. So they're very valuable, but they're bountiful. Offensive tackles, standalone, really not that valuable on the game itself. If you have a terrible one, that'll kill you. But it's more about that's a scarcity value conversation. There's not enough of those guys. So you can get value different paths. The scarcity versus the impact on the game can be a big time difference. So it's just always kind of fun to talk about and theorize how we got to this point as far as positional value.
All right. So I wrote an article this morning. Let me bring it up. Because I like this. I asked my son, I was taking him to the bus. I'm like, I'm not sure how I can rephrase this in writing. I said, I'll say it on the podcast. I'll say it live. The Falcons would be stupid to take a wide receiver at number 8. After this showing from the wide receivers, they'd be stupid to do it. So I just wrote it up. Falcons would be foolish to draft a wide receiver at 8. And I've said that all along, but I'm more convinced than ever after watching this group run yesterday and the speed that's going to be available for you. Change my mind.
Yeah.
Can you? I mean, I know you can't, but can you make a good argument for the Falcons to go wide receiver, knowing what they need, knowing the strengths at the top of this class, at the edge and defensive line, and possibly corner, if one of those big corners is there, that to me, it would be absolutely moronic for this Falcons team to take a wide receiver at number 8 in this class.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, gosh, Jahan Dotson, somebody we didn't talk about, he had a heck of a combine so far, looking really good. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, some of these top wide receivers. Somebody's going to be there for the Falcons when they pick in the second round. That is going to be extremely valuable. And also it'll be really interesting to see what the Falcons do as far as, I guess, value retention from likely moving on from Calvin Ridley. Maybe you are just literally flipping Calvin Ridley and whatever pick you get for him, wide receiver, replacing that expensive guy with a 4-year cost-controlled player with that pick. Would make a lot of sense, especially in this draft class. You're going to be able to find a good wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 upside player round 2, maybe a wide receiver 1. I don't know if I would bank on that, but you need 3 good ones. And last year the Falcons were playing 3 wide receiver 4s, so it'll help.
I mean, it is scary. Like I've said, well, the Falcons need a wide receiver. I'm like, they need everything. I get it, and I mean, it's really scary. If they reported to camp, and I know there's fans in here from other teams in here, a lot of Denver Broncos fans. You may have heard me say this before, and the Falcons fans, you may not even realize this. Calvin Ridley's gone. I'm not counting on him. And even if he's not coming to camp tomorrow. If the Falcons started training camp tomorrow, their wide receiver core as a total would have 1 catch for 14 yards.
Not very good.
Oh my God. That's 1 catch and 14 yards more than Vanderbilt, than the Kansas Jayhawks basketball team. That's one catch for 14 yards. Ray's coming in. Ray's going to know that. Ray, I'm not sure if you just heard me say that. Good morning, Ray. So if I get that the Falcons need a receiver. I do. They need a couple receivers. If they start a camp tomorrow, the only guy on their team that has a catch in the NFL is Frank Darby. Fifth or sixth or seventh round pick last year, late round pick last year, one catch for 14 yards. That's it. Russell Gage is a free agent. Calvin Ridley ain't coming back, and he certainly wouldn't be back for camp tomorrow anyway. That you need wide receivers, but if you can flip Calvin Ridley for a couple of picks or a higher pick, use that on wide receiver. There are so many receivers in this class. I mean, there's guys going on here. Again, you look at George Pickens, 6'3", 200 pounds, running the 4.4s. You look at Sky Moore, Christian Watson. Does he slide down into the second round? So many picks that if you take a wide receiver at number 8 in this class, you're a moron.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're right, and I agree with you. This class doesn't have a Jamar Chase. This class doesn't have a Jalen Waddle. I will say, Scott, if Jameson Williams was not injured coming off the ACL and we could see him test, I adore him. And I'm not much of the theist, not to get too deep into my personal life here, but like I go to bed thinking like, please God, don't let Jameson Williams go to the Chargers or the Raiders or the Chiefs because he would kill him.
Colin Wood, who would disagree with somebody just for the sake of disagreeing with, did bring up this point.
I love Colin.
What did bring up this point, because this was a counter argument I had with this. Okay,
yeah.
Jamar Chase really did make a difference for the Bengals, though. So my question is, if you're not allowed to flip him, would you trade the number 8 pick for Jamar Chase? You're not allowed to flip him. The answer is yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is yes. So therefore, does that mean you should cross wide receiver off this board or not? Does that make sense? If I get Jamar Chase, you take him at 8, right? Well, this guy might be Jamar Chase. Well, that's the problem. Might be.
Yeah.
For this team, if you gave me my choice, and here's my counter to that. If you gave me my choice between Micah Parsons and Jamar Chase, I'm taking Micah Parsons 50 freaking times. They need Micah Parsons so much more than they need Jamar Chase in order to have any kind of defense out there at all. They need Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
So when you bring in the mights, coulds, and the possibilities, and you bring in the doubts, and it's equal with the for sures, I've got a for sure Micah Parsons at edge, pass rusher, defense, or I've got a for sure wide receiver, I'm taking the for sure edge. So if I've got the maybe wide receiver and the maybe edge, I'm still going with the maybe edge. I'm still going defense. So yeah,
I like that. Thank you for categorizing.
Awesome. Hindsight is awesome, but unfortunately, we don't have that. But again, that was I went through that scenario in my head as well. If you could get Jamar Chase for the 8, yeah, hell yeah. Well, then why wouldn't you take a wide receiver at 8? Because there's too many doubts there, and I'd still rather have. I would rather have Micah Parsons than Jamar Chase for this team.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is not every draft class is the same, right? Jamar Chase last year, in this year's class, he'd be going top 3, maybe even number 1. Honestly, he'd be going number 1 because the Jags would be there and be like, oh, Trevor Lawrence needs help. So that's just the reality of it. But of course, I mean, you take him. Unfortunately, it's just not how the class works out. This is more of there's a really good group of 6, 8 wide receivers. That's another argument where take the last guy available or whatever flavor you prefer. And also thank you for categorizing Parsons as an edge. I shout out to you on that one because that's
why I like Devin Lloyd too. You know, I mean, I like Devin Lloyd because I think he can do more than just be
static off ball.
He can do more than just be Deion Jones or Foye Oluokun in the middle. He can go rush the passer.
Yep.
But going through this, and again, it's not. Let me zoom in. So give me a second, Nick. Fill some time for me. Fill some time.
Well, we're starting to get some of the confirmed official measurements for the offensive linemen. Some of the big names coming in. Tyler Linderbaum measuring in at just over 6'2", 296, which is actually a pretty good weight for him. Over 31-inch arms, which isn't great, but we knew he'd be a little bit small. He's not going to be testing because he suffered a foot sprain in Iowa's bowl game that I thought was a serious injury. And he actually came back out and finished the game, which was wild to me in a meaningless football game. If you get Tyler Linderbaum, we can debate positional value and scheme specificity for him, but you're going to get a guy who is going to give everything, a gladiator type. He's going to give everything. If
you're trying to limit the bust potential, then that's a really nice pick. But I think honestly, they did that with Lindstrom, and at guard with a high pick at guard,
Yeah.
and we need to be shooting for a higher ceiling than that with
Yeah.
this number 8 pick.
I agree. And Ike
but
Ekwonu got measured too, 6'4", 310, 34-inch arms. So everybody's like, oh, is he too small? Is his
and
arm
who was
length not good
this?
enough? Ekwonu,
He was
uh,
6'4". Okay, with
6'4", 34-inch arms. People are like, oh, he's not long enough. Oh, he's too squat. That dude, he's built like a box because he's, a unit.
he's
But
wide.
that's an offensive tackle body. If he doesn't work at offensive tackle, he can fail outside to kick inside, but that's an offensive tackle body. Evan Neal, 6'7" and a half, 340 pounds,
And
34-inch arm length.
he looked like a running back. I mean,
Yeah.
without if you just looked at him without any perspective, nobody else near him or anything, you're like, oh yeah, he's kind of a puffy wide receiver.
Yeah, he looks like the wide.
Is he a middle linebacker? No, he's 330 pounds.
Broncos
Going
country.
through some of the verified, the official times from yesterday. And remember, as you're looking through this list of these speed and playmakers at the wide receiver position and what you can possibly do, the two guys that my boy Todd McShay mocked to the Falcons aren't even on here. Jamison Williams and Drake London didn't even participate. And this thing still goes 25, 30 deep at the receiver position. So, yeah, again, you cannot talk me into a wide receiver at number 8 for this class for the Falcons. Can't do it.
The guy's not there too. That's the thing too. If there was a guy who was worth it, and I'm telling you, I think if Jamison Williams was healthy, I would be arguing with you right now, just because he's better than Henry Ruggs. I liked Henry Ruggs coming up, but Jamison Williams is so much more physical.
That said, if it was your nuts on the line, you still wouldn't draft him at 8. You could make the argument, but you still wouldn't do it.
It would depend on, if my nuts were on the line, I'd be dealing with a lot more information than I have right now.
And we would, and this will all be after free agency too.
Yeah, exactly.
This will be after free agency. But the thing is, the Falcons can clear some space, but I don't know that they're going to have enough space to plug the holes they need at tackle, at corner, at edge, in order to the fact that they could pass those over.
The expensive positions. That's why it's so valuable to take those ones early.
Good morning, Victor. Thanks for being here.
Morning, Victor. Yeah, not only is it because those are the positions that get paid a lot, the NFL does a pretty good job of separating the haves from the have-nots at those positions. If you want one of those positions, historical trends over the last 20 years says if you don't take one in the first round or top 50, top 40 picks, you're not getting them. You're definitely not getting them day 3 most of the time. If you find I think Broncos country is a little bit spoiled and a little bit unrealistic expectations, because they found Shaq Barrett, undrafted free agent, edge rusher. Doesn't happen. Chris Harris Jr., undrafted free agent, great cornerback. That's the fact that you rolled Yahtzee 2 times in a row with the 6 dice. That just doesn't happen. So historical trends, you need to look at the broader sample size there to dictate your decisions and the positional value.
And Mike asks, is wide receiver the new plug and play position? To a certain extent, excuse me, I think so. I said it's easier to find guys that will run and catch that are running in the 4.4s than it is to find guys that can run and hit or run and cover in the 4.4s. So to me, wide receivers are much more plentiful than the defensive guys. And it's only getting worse because it's not getting very much fun to play defense anymore. It's like, if I duck my head, they're going to throw me out of the game, especially in the college game. I'm not allowed to cover. I'm not allowed to tackle. I'm not allowed to sack the quarterback. I'm not allowed to play defense. I used to be all defense. I'm an SEC guy. The 92 Alabama Crimson Tide team is one of my favorite teams of all time. And yes, I went to Auburn. I don't care. That team, I just loved it. They were smash mouth, 2 huge ends. Their defense was amazing. That's how we grew up down here. I make fun of the Big 12 and their 60 to 56 games. It's ping pong. It's pinball football. Yeah. But that's the way the rules are right now. And Victor coming in with the super. Appreciate you, Victor. Thanks for the support, my friend.
Thank you.
And love you for it. Appreciate the help. Help keep the lights on and making us come out here a little bit more often, making it definitely worth our while. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, and one more guy I wanted to give a shout out.
Talking about that was Dimitrov's primary focus. They need several wide receivers. We know Monster D. His primary focus was Chris. I always said that Thomas Dimitrov, former general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, ran the team like he was the agent of a 7-on-7 quarterback, because he was going to pay the quarterback a ton of money and get his commission, and then he was going to try and find skill position players for the quarterback and overpay for those guys and forget everything else. You don't want to get me started this morning on Dimitrov.
Yeah, 100%. Gosh, there's a point.
Michael Bell, welcome. Appreciate you being here. He says you can't really lose on any of these wide receivers. They're all fast and some good size. And there's going to be guys that separate, and there's going to be fast guys that fall away for sure. Mm-hmm. But you don't know for sure which one of those who's going to be who. So don't reach. Don't rush. Be patient. And that's what I wrote up on here. It's, again, I can't emphasize enough. You need receivers. You need wide receivers with your Atlanta Falcons. And if you're another team that needs receivers, be patient. Be patient. Because there's going to be some that are going to fall down to you in the second round. Address the strengths of this draft that are rarely strengths on defense. The defensive line is freaking loaded. Address those while you can. Last year, interior defensive line was terrible. Edge rusher class was terrible. This year, we talk about that all the time, Nick, that how many guys would have gone in the top in this draft if you took last draft. Maybe one of those guys from this class would have gone in the top 10, maybe last year. Well, what about edge? If I took how many of the top 10 edge guys, if I combine the class of 21 and the class of 22, how many edge guys from 21 get into the top 15?
Are we talking about Parsons as an edge?
We weren't, no, not at the time.
Okay, I was curious if we were categorizing. I have some tweets dated back to December saying Parsons edge 1. But other than that, I guess, are we also, if we're talking like Jason Owe getting another year at Penn State, maybe he's ascending to a level of player. Aiden Hutchinson, I think, would be still up there in the top 15, but Kyle Hamilton probably still in that discussion as well. But other than that, I don't know if those guys do it. Also, just real quick before I forget about it, and we have a question here from, or a comment here from Chris Walker. Alec Pierce deserves a shout out too. He had a heck of a combine so far. He was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list, a down the field playmaker, massive, having to Skyford a lot of, we talked high about Desmond Ridder earlier, but some of Desmond Ridder, scatterball down the field at Cincinnati, and Pierce helped clean up for him. So Pierce is a lot of fun. And so good shout out there from Chris. As far as Justin Ross, the medicals are the big one for him. I don't even know what he tested, but he's had so many concerning injuries at Clemson that if he didn't even test at all, the big thing is, did he come away with a clean bill of health for the medical teams?
Yeah, him and John Mechie, Pickens, another injury guy, and I think helped himself a lot. One of the guys that we talk about, Dontario Drummond. I told you I saw him drop more passes than any from the wide receiver from Ole Miss. Built a little bit in that Deebo Samuel mold, which may be how you have to use him. He ran a 4.65. He didn't do himself any favors yesterday either. Let's see, his height and weight was 6'1", 215, with a 34-inch vert, 10.2 on the broad jump, 4.65. So he didn't do a lot to help himself either. And I thought he struggled at the Senior Bowl. So another guy that came off of there a little bit. Little preview for today. Nick, who are you watching? Who are the players to watch on day 2?
Oh, man, I'm really excited to see if Ikem Ekwonu is as explosive as he looks like on tape. I know that, unfortunately, Tyler Linderbaum, because the injury, is not going to be participating. I know that Evan Neal has decided not to participate as well. He's going to do it at the pro day. So guy that's stand out to me, the big one, is going to be Ikem Ekwonu from NC State. I really think there's a good argument that he could be the guy who goes number 1 overall. Historically, Trent Baalke, the GM for the Jaguars, formerly of the 49ers, has really emphasized athleticism and explosiveness for his offensive linemen. And while Evan Neal is decently smooth, he's the biggest of them as far as the overall stature, but Ekwonu is more explosive. He just is the more explosive player. So I'm really excited to see Ekwonu. This one's going to really hurt me to say because I made a vow to never hype up any players from this school because they stink. But Cam Jurgens from Nebraska is a very he's still a developmental project as a center, but he is an athlete, man. Watching Nebraska play, Cam Jurgens constantly stood out for them. I think he was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list as well. But he's super explosive. Check out for him as well. If you're looking for a day 3 interior offensive lineman that can be a developmental guy, Cam Jurgens is the one that I'm going to keep my eye on. He'll probably be a consistent feature in my mock drafts in that range because the Broncos probably need another developmental interior offensive lineman day 3 of the draft.
All right. On that note, I think we're probably going to call it a day and get moving. Appreciate everybody being here. Unless you have any last minute questions, so um, let me see some of the guys. Now, there's a couple guys in here that ran pretty well. Someone like Danny Gray, wide receiver, SMU. 4.33. Bo Melton, Rutgers, 4.34. There hadn't been any talk about these guys. Are they just fast guys? Or do they have a chance to make some noise in the draft?
Might have a chance to make some noise in the draft. Just the nature of the position that I sit in, I haven't had a chance to watch every wide receiver because the Broncos aren't really heavily scouting wide receivers. So my position, my time has been spent on quarterbacks, offensive tackles, front seven, cornerbacks, etc. So definitely a chance for those guys to go there. But it's also these metrics you're talking about, the 40 speed, and I think it was Jeremy earlier saying Colin Wood ran a 4.61. Congrats, Colin. Cooper Kupp ran a 4.61. Cooper Kupp's not being asked to win like DK Metcalf on the boundary down the field. 40 matters. While they all play wide receiver, what these guys' specific niches are matters a lot for what metrics matter for their.
And check his shuttle time if you want to play him in the slot.
10 yards
side to side guys. I bet he had a good shuttle.
Yeah. Yep. Shuttle, 3-cone, the verticals and the broad still jump. Explosiveness in the lower body is always going to be one of the most important things. And the 10-yard split for the wide receiver as well. He's not being asked to win, 40 yards down the field consistently. He's not being asked to, like a good basketball player, win and then cut to the paint. That's kind of like your boundary wide receivers and get vertical. So that's not always the most valuable. So some of those guys, while they ran fast, maybe it's not the most valuable. And as you say, it's the enough factor. I call it a threshold basis because that's more specific jargon for my profession.
It sounds more, I call it the enough factor. It's big enough, but yeah, it makes sense. What's your bar? Chris comes in, before I forget him, what do you think is a bigger need for the Falcons, left guard or right tackle? Nick, I'll let you take a stab at this one first.
Bigger need is probably... This can be a nuanced answer. I guess we'll just go simple. The right tackle is the bigger need because it's the harder one to fill. You can find yourself a competent left guard right before offseason kicks off, right before OTAs are officially going. Last year, the Falcons went with Jalen Mayfield, I think almost as much to let him get his bumps and bruises and see if he can develop and learn along the way to see if he's competent enough to deserve a year or two. Right tackle is much harder to find. We kind of talked about it earlier in here. Wide receiver is valuable because of their impact on the field, but it's not a scarce position. You can find wide receivers. Right tackle, they're not going to bring a lot of allotted value, that AV metric that Pro Football Reference likes to use. But they're so scarce to find competent body types, athletes that can play that position that it skyrockets their value. So definitely right tackle is the biggest need. Also, most likely, the right tackle is going to be going up against a more dynamic player, more of a game changer at the edge than your left guard is. Your left guard can get some help. Right tackle, not as much. So right tackle, way more valuable.
All right. So to answer the question directly, because like Nick said, it was a nuanced answer for me. In order for the Falcons to improve more quickly, the bigger hole is at left guard. Mm-hmm. So your left guard play is worse than your right tackle play. So I think that the need for improvement, if I had said I could improve one position first, take everything else in a vacuum, money, availability, all that kind of stuff in a vacuum, fixing the left guard position would make my team better faster than fixing the right tackle position.
Yep.
So I would say that the left guard is a bigger need. Now, it's easier to fix the left guard position, which is what Nick's saying. So if I'm using a premium resource, money, draft picks, you're going to go right tackle. You're going to go with a tackle on that one. But as far as what do I need to do to make this team better quickly, left guard's got to get better. That's the single biggest hole on, and that's not Jalen Mayfield's fault. He was drafted as a backup right tackle and he got forced to play guard. I think he's a better guard. He's a young guy. He's 21 years old.
Yep.
It's not his fault that he was the best option. That's the Atlanta Falcons' fault that Jalen Mayfield was their best option. Yep. But for me, to fix the team, the bigger need is left guard. Yeah. And like I said, it's a nuanced answer for sure. That doesn't mean I'm spending a first-round draft pick on a left guard to fill that hole, for sure.
No. You should be able to find a plug-and-play veteran that for not a lot of money that can bring you competency. 4.0 H shuttle for Coop. I'm going to be honest with you, Jeremy. Without the percentile of where that falls, that doesn't mean much to me because position by position is really different. It's good. Okay. So there you go. Also, the fact
it's
that
good. It doesn't surprise me. Like I said, funny how that works out. When I saw, 408, it's good. That's a good number, especially at the combine.
And for somebody who's 6'2", like Coop, the people think Wes Welker, the 5'10", diminutive kind of guy. Coop is big, and that's another thing that makes him so valuable too. Is I don't want to derail us too much, but because he's so big, he's kind of almost a flanker tight end functioning in the run game, and nobody runs out of 11 personnel better than the Rams because Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp are dogs as blockers. So if you're going to play in sub package and or even dime, we're going to be able to run functionally out of 11 personnel every time and kill you.
Another reason to love a couple of guys that have done well in Georgia. Julio Jones, I know he's from Alabama, but an Atlanta guy, and Calvin Johnson just block their asses off.
Yeah.
So good morning, Big E. Welcome. And on that note, I think we should say aloha because that's an aloha means goodbye. I think we're going to get out of here and appreciate everybody showing up for this emergency gut reaction. But we planned on doing it anyway. And as I was watching the guys run last night, again, my first thought for teams across the board was, man, you're gonna be able to upgrade your speed at the wide receiver position. Yeah. You're going to be able to get better. And Jeremy says that Cooper came in 85th percentile. Yeah, not bad for a guy 6'2".
Yeah,
for his size especially. So that doesn't surprise me. Been doing this a while that he had a good shuttle time.
Yeah.
Because like I said, those are when I want to find athletes, shuttle, elk cone, broad, and vertical. Those four. I look at those four to me are more important. The 40s are fun, but show me a little bit more. If Tyquan Thornton goes off and riffs off a 4.28, but a 4.5 shuttle, he's stiff.
Yep. He's
stiff. He's a straight line guy. He needs to be running track. Then I know he's just a track guy playing football. If he goes out there and runs a 3.9 shuttle, he's returning punts from me, and I probably wouldn't wish he was a cornerback. But on that note, we're going to get going. Lots of good stuff on the weekend. Now, if you want to watch some more draft stuff, Eric Trickle on Mile High Huddle will be all over this tonight on and I recommend Falcons fans check it out too. Or fans of any team on Mile High Huddle if you want to get some insight on the draft prospects. On Mile High Huddle, Dove Valley Deep Divers, Eric Trickle will be diving into that tonight. And then Nick and I will be back Monday morning on Mile High Huddle before we return to this channel on Wednesday. So on that note, we'll see you again soon. Hit the comments. Love the comments on YouTube. Make sure you're following up with any questions. Something I said that I may have messed up, or I can just admit to it and say, yeah, I was just wrong on that. I like the ability to follow up with y'all. So hit the comment section afterwards if you're watching this after the fact. On that note, have a good day. And as Nick always says, choose kindness, choose compassion, and we'll see you next time.